Okay, class. So in this lesson, we're going to go over how to get started on your project 2. So to start off, I'm going to go to the command panel on the right and go over to Create tab on the Geometry. We're going to go to the drop down here, and we're going to go to AEC Extended. AEC stands for Architectural, Engineering, and Construction, and this is for making buildings. So everything in here is kind of like a template. And first off, we're going to start off using the wall tool. So I'll show you how to go about using that. And next, we're going to make windows and doors and stairs. So first off, let's go ahead and start using the wall tool. I am going to make a ground plane here. So before I start here, I'm going to go to Standard Primitives and just make a plane. So I kind of want my area to be kind of contained in this. I'm just going to center this up a little bit. Right click on these spinners. Make sure it's 0, 0, 0. I'm going to change my color to something I like, blue. Going to go back to AEC Extended. Click on the wall tool. Now the thing about the wall tool, before you start trading your wall, you want to look at these parameters here. You see that you have the width and your height, and you have your justification here. This has to be changed before you start making your wall. Otherwise, trying to do this after you make your wall tool is not going to come out right. Now I'm going to go with the default here, and I'm going to show you what that does. So I'm going to move to my top view here. So I'm just going to hit Alt W to maximize that view. And I'm going to turn off wireframe, put it on shaded mode. And I'm going to turn my snaps on. So it snaps to my grid points here. So by default, your snaps are going to be on grid points, and that's what I want. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and just make a wall here. So I'm just clicking, letting go, and I can go in any direction. So it's kind of just like the line tool. And using the snaps just makes it a little bit easier. Then when you come back to the beginning here, and ask you if you want to weld a point, just tell it yes. Then you're still in your create mode, so you need to right click to end it. And you see you're still in create mode for wall, so right click again to get off of it. Go back to modify. And now you see that under modify, usually you see the parameters, but now you don't have parameters. They're gone. They're completely gone. So this is why I was saying that before you actually start to make your wall, you need to change the height and width parameters beforehand, because afterwards you cannot. So now let's back out of this view, go into perspective view, see what I made. So this is the start for our exterior for the walls. So let's go over how the wall tool actually works. We go to shaded mode just so I don't see any shadows. I'm going to turn off my snaps tool. I don't need that for now. I'm going to turn on edge faces so I can see my segments here, because that's important for the next step. And I'm going to click on a little plus sign here for the wall. So first thing you have here is vertex mode. And with vertex mode, you can actually go in and see your vertices. So if I would hit F3 on the keyboard, now it's going to show me the wireframe of this wall. And now with vertex mode highlighted, I can select vertices here, and I can move them around to change the way the wall looks. And let's see. So next up, we have different options you have in here for the vertex mode. You have connect, break, refine, insert, and delete. Now before I start doing anything, I'm going to use my handy hold and fetch tools. So before I do anything, hold, just so I save my place here. And first off, we are going to use the break tool. Now break tool, when you click on this, you have to be selected on a vertex. So you hit the break tool here. So now what it does is it splits the vertices in half. So now this wall is open now. So I broke that corner there. And let's go back to connect tool. Let's say I want to connect this back up. I'm going to click on the connect tool. I'm going to click this vertex. And then you'll see it draws a dotted line. I'm going to click this vertex I broke it from. And now it connects that wall back. So this is kind of like the bridge tool when you're using editable poly. And next up we have refine. So with refine, the way this works is when you drag a point out over the line, you'll see that the cursor changes to a little crosshair and it gives you kind of like a little parallel symbol. This lets you drop vertices right on the segments. So now I can go in here, drop some extra vertices, right click to end it. Now I can go in here, just kind of change the way this looks. So if I want to make this wall a little bit different here, I can do all of that. So sort of a different type of wall. And next up you have insert. Now insert works a little bit different than refine. Check this out. When you click on the line here, now it's going to allow you to move where you just made the new segment, the new vertex. So next time you click, it's going to extend this out. Click, extend this out. Click, extend it out. And when you want to stop this, you just simply right click. And of course, the last one, delete, actually deletes the vertex. But now you don't have control over the wall where you deleted it. So you got to be careful when you're using the delete tool. So let's go back and fetch that. Now we're going to move to segment mode. And if I go into wireframe mode, you'll see that when I'm in segment mode, I can actually select the individual walls now. So not the vertices that make the points, but I can select the segments now. So first up, we have break. You click on this. It's going to add a division in the wall. So it's kind of like the refine tool. So now you have different segments that you can pull out. Now you notice that when I use the break tool, it actually breaks the wall apart. So that little segment that I just entered here is actually going to break apart from the wall here. So now I have a completely different segment here of the wall. Now next up we have detach. Now with detach you have some different options here. You have detach to the same shape, you have reorient, and you have copy. So if I were to go to detach without it, you'll see that it's going to give me an option to detach as wall 002. So what this is going to do is this is going to make a completely separate object. So I'm going to cancel that. What I want to do is I want to make it to the same shape. And I want to make a copy of it. So I want to keep this wall as is, but I want to duplicate it. So this is how you duplicate. So detach. And now I have a copy of it. Now I can move it off here. Now move it around to the back. Let's say we have divide. Now divide allows you to add segments along the wall, but it actually gives you an option to set the number of divisions prior to dividing it. Let's say I want 4 divisions along this wall. I set the number of 4, hit divide, and there you go, 4 divisions. And next up you have insert. And just like the insert for the vertex mode, it works the same exact way. It allows you to keep creating walls. You just right click to end it. Next up you have delete. So if I want to select the wall and just completely delete it, I can do that. Then you have the refine tool, and this just is going to drop a segment in where you want it. So this is kind of a manual mode for divide. I'm going to go and fetch that. And we're going to take a look at how to change the height of your wall. So when you're under segment mode, you see you actually have parameters to change the width, height, and the bottom segment for your wall. So now I can go in here and change the height. Now this is important to note. When you're changing the height for the wall, you want to select all your wall segments at the same time before you change this parameter here. Check this out. I'm going to select this segment here without selecting anything else. I'm going to change the height to 150. You notice that it is a completely different height than the other set of the wall. So now if I click on this segment here, it'll tell me it's 96. If I select everything, it says it's 96, but we know this wall segment here is 150. So let's say I type in 120, and now it's going to readjust all the segments to be a height of 120. And what everything's still selected, I'm going to change the height to something like, well, the width to something like 2, just to make the wall a little thinner. Now let's say you want to make a basement area or something, you want your wall to extend downward. This is where you change the 0 position of where the z-axis starts. But I'm going to leave that on 0. And I'm going to change the width back to 5, just so it's easier to see. Leave the height on 120. Now here, you don't really need to mess with these options. Now we're going to start putting some doors and windows on this wall here. So go back to the drop down, go to doors. And you have 3 types of doors. You have pivot, sliding, and bifold. Starting off with pivot. Now the way you create your door is very important. You want to create your door on top of the wall so that it automatically booleans out the wall here. Because the way the doors and the windows work with the wall template is it will automatically cut out the inside of it for you. So I'm going to turn back on my snaps tool, hitting S on the keyboard, and I'm just going to kind of draw my wall out here. So I'm drawing out the width first. So click and drag to draw out the width, let go. Drag out for the depth, click. Drag up for the height, click to end it. So now I've made the door. I'm going to turn off the snap tool, and right click, and with the door still selected, go to modify, and now I can change my parameters. So I know that I made the depth of this a little bit too thick. So let's bring this down to something like 2. Now to check to see if the door actually boolean out the wall, there's an option right here to open it. You see when you go to open, it actually cuts the hole out of that wall there. So you have some different parameters in here to kind of change the width and the height. So if you're not satisfied with your original, you can always go and change it. You can change this to double doors. You can flip the swing. You can flip the hinge if you have a single door. And then your next options are for the frame. You can change the size of your frame. If you want a really thick frame, change the depth of that. Speed that back to 1. You can kind of offset it a little bit. And next up, you have your parameters that are going to directly affect the door, like the thickness. That's a really thick door. Now you got to be careful with the thickness here because it's going to get rid of your boolean. You see as I move the thickness up and down, it kind of gets rid of the boolean operation. So you just kind of be careful with that. And this is kind of the inner frame of the door. You can change the way this looks. You can change the number of panels on the door for horizontal and vertical. So this is a cool way of kind of fixing that. You can kind of change if you want none, or if you want glass or beveled. You see the bevel adds some extra little details in there. You can change all the bevel settings in here. Change the thickness of it. That's pretty much the door. And you notice that when I move it here, it's going to update on the wall how it booleans it out. So that's pretty cool. So let's say you get a door that you want and you want to copy it around your wall. Let's say I want to move this door. Well, not move it, but copy it. So if I hold shift and drag this out, make a copy, tell it OK. Now I have another door. I'm going to flip the swing on this, make it double doors. And you see it still holds that Boolean operation in there. Let's say I want to put this on a different side. So I'm going to shift, drag this out again, make a copy. I know I want to rotate this 90 degrees, so I'm going to turn on my angle snap. Make sure it's 90 degrees. And move this into place. And voila. Booleans out that wall just fine. So let's try a different door. Now you notice I hit delete and it still has that Boolean operation there. So if you click back on the wall, it'll update. Let's try a sliding door and make it the same exact way. Now this is something to note. There's a difference between making it in your perspective view and the other views. The book is going to tell you to make it in your top view, but I'm going to show you, as you've seen in class, that doesn't always work. So I like to make it in a perspective view, because if you're making something in the top view, you can only see it from 2 dimensions. So let's say I go to Snap Tool and I start to draw out the wall here. Then I draw out the depth. Let's try that again. I'm going to click, drag out to make the width, let go, drag forward for the height like I did before, click. Now I'm going to drag up for the height. Now you see that I can't see it in the top view, but I can see it in the perspective view in the bottom right. So sometimes when you're making in different views, you just have to look at all your viewpoints, perspectives to see where you are. I'm just gonna click to finish that. Right click, and let's see if my door worked. It looks like it did. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Turn off my snaps. Gonna open this up, and yes, it looks like it worked. So all the settings, parameters are identical for all the doors. There's no difference. So no matter what kind of door you're making, the settings are going to be the same. So I'm not going to go over the parameters again because as you see, they're the same. That's your sliding door. And next up you have your bifold door. Turn on snaps again. I'm going to draw it out on the width. Bring the height up. So if your bifold door folds in this direction, of course you can go in here and play with the parameters, change the way this functions. So those are your three types of doors. You have your pivot, you have your sliding, and your bifold. So I'm going to keep the pivot door and I'm going to get rid of these two. Just going to kind of move that here. And we're going to go in here and make some windows. I'm going to flip the swing on that so it swings inward. Flip the hinge. So I like going this direction. There we go. So now let's make some actual windows in here. I'm going to go back to the Create tab, go to the drop down, and we're looking for windows. Now you have 6 different types of windows, and I'm not going to go over all of these because they are made the exact same way the doors are made. So I'm just going to go over the first one here, which is the awning. I'm going to turn on snaps just so it's easier to select the wall. Now again, you need to build this on top of the wall here so it actually booleans out the inside, so you don't have to do it manually. So just like I made the doors here, I'm going to click, drag out for the width, let go, drag forward or back for the depth, click, and drag up for the height. And there's my window. Turn off snaps, and I'll just move that up. You see it automatically cuts that hole out for me. I'm just going to give it a depth of 1. So now we see that my window is boolean out. It's on the center of that wall here. So it's sitting right in the middle. And just like the door, I can actually open this window. And you have some different parameters in here to change the number of panels here that you want to open. So this kind of makes a really cool effect. Change this to something a little bit more visible. Go. So there's your awning. You have casement. Up next, turn on snaps again. And click and drag out for the width. Let go. Drag forward for the depth. Click. Drag up for the height. Click. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. Turn off snaps. And it's important to turn off snaps when you actually want to move your object, because I have my snaps tool snapping the grid point. So if I were to try to move this up, it's not going to go up. It's going to move along the grid point here. And that's not what I want. So I turn snaps off when I'm translating my object. So again, I'm going to open this. So this flips open this way. You can make kind of 2 panels here. Again, I'm going to change the width, something like 1. I mean the depth. And then of course you have different options for your frame. So those are your windows, and just like the door, let's say I want to copy this window on the other side here, I can just kind of shift drag this out, copy, and I'm going to turn on my angle snap. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, and just kind of place this to where it's bisecting the wall, and it's automatically going to boolean that out. So now you can see this is starting to become sort of a cool interior for your house, I mean exterior, because that's what we're focusing on is your exterior. We're not really focusing on the interior right now. Now, let's say I want to go in here and I want to make a room in here. So let's say I want to put a line straight through here and make this a separate room. Let's go back to the wall tool and do that. So I know that I need to have another vertex right here to connect this piece of the wall here. So I need to go back into either segment or vertex mode. I go back into vertex mode and I go to refine, and I'm just going to drop a segment right here. And now I want to connect these two, but I want to make sure they are centered up. So to figure this out, I'm going to select this vertex here because I want to be aligned with this. And I know that I want it to be aligned on the x-axis. So this up and down axis here. So I'm going to copy what this x value is down here in your coordinate setting here. So this x value is negative 70. So I'm just going to Control C to copy that. And if I select this vertex, you see that this one is a little bit different. So it's a little bit off. So if I connect this wall right now, this wall is going to be slanted instead of straight. So I'm just going to paste that value in there. Now you see that jumps there. So now this is going to be straight all the way across when I connect it. So now I can use the connect tool and select this vertex. Select both of these. And now it connects. Now you notice what happened here. Remember how I was telling you that when you initially make your wall tool, whatever height you set by default is what the height is going to be. So anytime you make a new wall, it's going to default to that original height. So I can go in here and fix this though. And select this segment, and I know that I set my height to 120, so I just type that in. So now I have my height, and this is a separate room now. Let's say I want to go in here and let's say I'll make a sliding door for this room. Now, I'm not even going to use the snaps this time. I'm going to show you something a little bit different. I'm just going to kind of gauge where this wall is. So I'm going to drag out for the width, let go, drag forward for the depth, click, drag up for the height, click, and you see it booleans out that wall there. But the problem is my door isn't all the way horizontal. I mean, it's not centered correctly. You can see that when I go to the rotate tool, this is 90, this is 0, and this is 89.9. So this should be an even 90 to make this flush with this wall here. So now I have my sliding door here. Change the depth a little bit. Say something about 2. Change the height. Maybe change the width to a longer sliding door. So now we have another interior room here. We have a window in here. We have that divided up there. So now that works. So then we have an interior in here. We have this kind of divided up in our house. So next up, let's take a look at stairs. So to go to stairs, I'm just going to save this right quick. Instead of hitting save, I'm just going to use hold because I want to hold this position. So hold is kind of a temporary save. It saves into memory. It doesn't save to a file, but it saves it in memory. So let's take a look at stairs. So you have a bunch of different types of stairs. Let's go with the straight stair here. I'm going to turn on my snaps here because I kind of want to get it even along the grid here. And I'm just going to kind of make it along this line here. Because I'm just going to kind of make it outside of the exterior for the house. So when you're making stairs, you're going to want to click and drag out. And this is going to be the length of the stairs. Let go. And you're going to drag out for the width. Click. And then you're going to drag up for the height. Click. You know, sometimes when you're using snaps and you do your last click for your height, it's going to snap to the grid points because that's what I have it set on for snapping. So sometimes using a snap tool is going to cripple you, but you can always go into the parameters here and I can go in here and change the height to something like 120. So now I have my stairs, and let's reorient this to face the right direction. So about there. Now these are kind of crooked here, so I'm going to change the values down here because the Z for the rotation is like negative 1.4. So I'm just going to zero that out. And you see how that straightens up and it makes it flush with that wall here. So let's say these are going to be my stairs for my exterior. That's going to go up to a second floor. So let's say this is kind of like maybe a condo or something. So here in your parameters, you can kind of change the height here under the rise. You can change your original layout here. So if I want the length to be different, I can change that. If I want the width to be different, I can change that. Now under your rise settings, you see that you have 3 different pins here, and depending on which you have pinned here, it's going to affect how you can alter this staircase here. So overall, it's going to change the overall height. So once you get it to something you want, you can kind of leave it alone. And now I want to change the number of steps. So now I'm going to pin the overall. So now I can go in here and change the number of steps. So once you get the steps the way you want it, I'm going to change the rise height. I'm going to pin this. So now I can change the height and the number of stairs at the same time. So depending on what you want to do, you can go in here and change these numbers. Now I'm fine with the number of stairs. So I'm just going to pin that, and I'm just going to change the overall height just a little bit, just so it matches up with that. Now you have some different settings in here for your stairs. You have 3 different types you can do. You can have your open, you have closed, and you have box. So they'll give you varying results depending on which one you want to do. I'm just going to leave mine open for now so we can actually see the rest of the parameters here. Now I'm going to turn on stringers here, and you'll see that these are kind of these little side rails here. And I'm going to turn on, this turns on the carriage, this little under part here for the stairs. I'm going to turn on my handrails, left and right. And let's actually go to carriage. I'm going to turn off handrails for now, so we'll show this one by one. I'm going to go to my carriage, and I'm going to change the overall depth. You see, as I increase this number, it's going to flatten this out to shape as box mode. And of course, you can change the overall width of this. So this is going to be your center of the staircase, underneath of that, your carriage. Now you can change it to spring from floor. You see as I check and uncheck this, it's going to change the Z height of this. Usually I always want it to spring from the floor unless you're doing some really complex stairs. So next up you have your railings, and this is grayed out because I have this turned off. So I'm going to set the height of my railing a little bit higher. You can change your offset to make it go inward a little bit. You can change the radius to make this a little bit thicker. And your segments is going to change the overall roundness of this so it'll be more cylindrical. So let's change the radius a little bit down just so it's not so big. And next up you have your little stringers here. And these are the sides of the carriage. So instead of being the inner carriage, these are the outer carriage. And they're going to go outward instead of inward. We change the offset of that. So you can get some very different results depending on what you're doing with this. So that's your straight stair. So next up you have your L-shaped stair. And it's going to be exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be an L shape. I'm going to change the width on this so you can see this better. You have your L-shaped stair. And the parameters are pretty much the same. Next up you have your U-shaped stair. And of course this is going to be in the shape of a U. Then you have my personal favorite, which is the spiral stair. It's going to form in an arc kind of a shape. And you can go about doing this here. Change the width. You can change the revolution to make this kind of revolve a little bit more. So if you want a big spiraling staircase, change the overall height of this. Change the number of steps. Make this closed or open. I'm just going to change the overall height of this again so it's a little bit more. There we go. So those are your 4 different types of stairs you can make. Just going to get rid of these. Save that. Well, I want to save it. I want to hold it. So this is kind of how you can get started making your house. And in the next tutorial, we're going to come back and I'm going to show you the rest of the objects. Okay, so next up, we're going to go over railings. So we're going to go back to AEC Extended and we're going to look for railings. Now, before you make your railing, you need to make a path for the railing to follow. So to do so, you go to Shapes and we're going to make a line. And I'm just going to kind of make a outer perimeter here for, let's say I want this to be a fence or something. You can go to Snaps, and I'm going to go to my top view just so I can see it better. And I'm just going to kind of draw this out around my house, like so. Close that up. Go back to perspective view. So now you see my line going all the way around. Turn off snaps, don't need that. Go to my railing tool, and the first option it's going to ask you is to pick your path, your railing path. And since we just made this path here, just going to pick this, go to railing. Now right now you didn't really see much happen. You see that I have this little picket here and a picket here. The reason you can't really see much here is because we need to change the segments. So as you change the segments, it's going to interpolate along the path. So the more segments you have, the more it's going to conform to your path. And you can tell it to respect corners, and now it's going to actually make the corners 90 degrees. So next up, you have profile. So right now it's on a square profile, so it's going to kind of look like a rectangular shape. You can change this to rounded, and you'll see it change to a cylindrical shape. You can change the depth, the width, the overall height. Now you have your lower railings here. Change the depth and the width of that. You can also change the number of railings. So if I click on this little button here, this is the spacing tool. And you can change the number of railings here. So if you want it to be on edges or centers, say center. You can change the number of posts that go around. Let's go into spacing, and I'll just change the number of posts here. Of course, you can change the depth and the width of that. That's going to kind of realign everything there. Let's go to fencing. You can change the number in between the pickets. I'm just going to leave that on a low value, something like 2. And now check this out. Once you got your railing down the way you want it, you can actually go back and change the way this looks. So I'm going to get off of railing. I'm going to go back to the line tool. Let's say I want to move this around somewhere over here. Now it's going to update the railing based on where you have your path. So I can move my path along. I can add points along my path. So if I right click and go to refine, if I add a point on the line here, I can move this point off into space. You'll see that it's going to auto adjust the railing. Let's say I add another point, except for this point, I want it to be a smooth point. So if I right click on this point and tell it to be smooth, you'll see that it'll put like a smooth curve in there. And do that for this one too. Just have it smooth. And you can also change the height of this. So let's say your house is on a hill or something, you can change the height of this to be affected by that. So that's pretty much your railing tool. I'm going to change the width and length of this just so it kind of matches out here, because this is going to serve as the ground plane here. Now last off, let's kind of go in here and put some trees. So the last option is foliage. Let's say I want to put a tree right here. So this is going to make a big tree object here. This is a little bit too large, so let's scale this down a little bit. So go into foliage and change the overall height of this. Now, the cool thing about the foliage tool is it's procedurally made. So you can go in here, and if you go to seed, you can just make a random generated tree. Every time you click this button, it's going to randomly generate it. So it's going to look different every time. Let's try a different tree. Let's try American Elm, which is my favorite. So then you have some parameters in here to change the way this looks. You can change the branches, the trunk. If you want no leaves, you can turn the leaves off. Some objects have flowers and fruit. This one does not. The last option you have is the level of detail in the canopy mode. So right now, if I click off of this, you're going to see that it turns into this little canopy shape to kind of encapsulate where it is. This is the save memory. So when you click back on it, it'll show all the leaves. So if you want to turn this off, you can just change it to never. So when you click off of it, it's not there anymore. So that's foliage. You can go in there and just kind of play around with that. You can populate your scene, but just be careful about how many trees and plants you put in there because it's going to eat up memory really quick. Let's say I want to enclose the shape now. I actually got the house the way I want it, and I want to put a roof and a floor on here. I'm going to use this tool here to cut out a shape for the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this because I want to use my ground plane as the ground and the inside floor here, but I'm going to use the wall here as a cut tool. I'm going to turn on my layers here, and I'm just going to separate out my wall into a separate layer. So with this selected, I'm going to hit select highlighted, and I'm just going to go to create new layer. I'm just going to name this wall. So now under this layer, I have just the wall, so I can toggle this on and off like so. So now I'm going to move my actual wall that I want to copy here. So I'm just going to hit shift and drag this down a little bit because I want this wall bisecting it just a little bit, and hit copy. And now this is wall 002, so I'm going to hide the original wall, and this is the second wall I made. Now notice that it kept the boolean for the objects here. But all I'm using this for is just to cut out the floor. So let's go back and select the second wall. I'm just going to delete that. Now, before I copy this wall, I just want to make sure my doors, my windows are kind of offset a little bit so they don't boolean them out. So with everything selected into a group, see I can move it off here. So I'm going to make this a group. So I'm going to go to group this. I'm going to call this doors, windows. Group that. And you see the position down here. I'm going to affect the pivot of that, and I'm just going to zero that out. So now that position of my group is 0, 0, 0. So now I have a point to go back to. And I'm just going to move this off a little bit so it doesn't do the Boolean. I'm going to hit Control V to copy the wall 002. Now I'm going to snap this back to where it was. So we know this is 0, 0, 0. And it seems that when I put it back to this position, it doesn't actually boolean this out anymore. So I'm just going to ungroup this. And now it booleans out that shape. But it's not going to boolean out this one because this is the copy. The copy is the one I want to use as the cut tool. So this is what I wanted. It looks good. So I'm going to move this down, and I know I want the whole inside, so I can get rid of this segment here. So I'm going to go into the wall, go to segment, select this segment, and delete. Yep, so now that's done. I'll go outside the wall tool now. So now I have my wall here that I want to use as a cut tool. And I'm just going to right click on this, and I want to convert this to editable poly. And I don't need to do this for the plane. And I'll show you why. I'll get rid of the segments here just so we don't see them. And I'm going to go to Compound Objects, Boolean, operand B, pick this wall, and now look what it does. It cuts that outline of the wall. And once I'm satisfied with that, convert to editable poly. And now I have the inner where the floor is and the outer where the ground is. So now I can detach this as a separate object, detach, and this is going to be floor. And I want to detach it as an object, not a clone. So now it's a separate object. So now if I go in here and I change the color, see that it's a separate object now. And I'm going to turn back on the wall here. Now I have my floor and my ground. So also with the floor here, you kind of move this up to make your ceiling, like so. So I'm going to copy that. So now I have a floor and a ceiling here. So this is kind of serves as my second floor here. So now if I wanted to start a second floor, I can go about doing it here now. So this is a quick way you can kind of get started and get your house looking right. If you have any questions, just email me.